The arrogant, racist journalist thought he was about to expose Morgan Freeman as an overrated product of Hollywood. What he didn't know was that, within minutes, he would be left speechless, humiliated, and struggling to salvage his own reputation on live television. The studio lights burned bright, illuminating the stage where two figures sat across from each other. On one side, Morgan Freeman, the legendary actor and narrator, exuded a calm authority. On the other, Ethan Caldwell, a sharp-tongued journalist, notorious for his confrontational interviews, leaned forward with an eager smirk. The tension was palpable. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Straight Talk," Ethan announced, turning toward the camera. "Tonight, we have a guest who needs no introduction, Morgan Freeman. But let's not waste time with pleasantries. Mr. Freeman, do you think Hollywood has given you more than you deserve?" A murmur rippled through the audience. It was an unusual opening, direct, almost dismissive. But Freeman remained unfazed. He tilted his head slightly, as if weighing the question. Ethan continued, not waiting for an answer. "I mean, let's be honest. Many believe that your career thrived more because of political correctness than sheer talent. That, let's say, Hollywood has favored you for reasons beyond your acting ability. Do you really think you'd be where you are if you weren't? You know." His voice lingered on the last word, heavy with implication. Silence. A charged, electric silence. The audience shifted in their seats. The question was loaded, offensive even. But Morgan Freeman didn't flinch. Instead, he slowly folded his hands in his lap and let the silence hang, making Ethan squirm. Then in that signature, deep, measured voice, Freeman finally spoke. "You seem very interested in explaining my success to me, Ethan. Tell me, do you believe talent is something that can be given, or is it earned?" Ethan's smirk faltered for the first time. For a moment, Ethan Caldwell was caught off guard. He hadn't expected Morgan Freeman to turn the question back on him so effortlessly. But arrogance is a stubborn thing, and instead of backing down, Ethan leaned forward, his smirk returning. "Oh, I don't deny that you're talented, Mr. Freeman," he said, forcing a chuckle. "But let's be real here. We both know Hollywood loves a good redemption story, a narrative where a struggling actor rises against all odds. And let's just say, some people get extra help along the way." The insinuation was clear. The audience murmured again, sensing the hostility beneath the journalist's polished tone. Freeman remained still, his fingers lightly tapping the armrest of his chair. He didn't react with anger. He didn't even blink. Ethan continued, emboldened by Freeman's silence. "Look, I'm just saying, if you had started your career in, let's say, a different era, without the push for diversity, would you really have had the same success? Or do you think Hollywood might have, how should I put it, been a little too eager to celebrate someone like you?" The way he said "someone like you" sent a wave of unease through the audience. Even those who had come expecting a heated interview hadn't anticipated this level of blatant condescension. Morgan Freeman took a slow breath. Then, with a voice as smooth as ever, he replied, "Ethan, I've worked in this industry for over 5 decades. I've seen talented men rise and fall. I've seen brilliance overlooked and mediocrity rewarded. If you think longevity in Hollywood is handed out like a gift, then you don't understand this business at all." For the first time, Ethan's composure cracked. Ethan Caldwell shifted in his seat. For the first time, it felt like he was losing control of the interview. But he couldn't afford to let Freeman dictate the pace. He needed to regain the upper hand. With a forced chuckle, he waved a dismissive hand. All right, Mr. Freeman. No need to get defensive. But let's talk about something else. You've been very vocal about race in Hollywood." Freeman held up a hand, stopping him mid-sentence. "No, I haven't." His voice was calm, but firm. Ethan blinked. "Excuse me. I haven't been very vocal about race in Hollywood," Freeman clarified. "In fact, I've spent years saying that if you want racism to go away, stop talking about it like it's the only thing that defines a person's success or failure. You see, Ethan, I don't need to explain my career through the lens of race. I built it on hard work, persistence, and talent, just like anyone else who's lasted in this industry." The audience erupted in applause. Ethan's smirk flickered, struggling to stay in place. He hadn't expected Freeman to sidestep his bait so effortlessly. Ethan tried again, crossing his arms. That's a nice sentiment. But let's be honest here. Yes, let's be. Freeman interjected smoothly. Because honestly, Ethan, I think the real question is, why does my success bother you so much? The studio fell silent. Ethan's confidence wavered for the first time. Ethan Caldwell opened his mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, he looked genuinely unsettled. He hadn't expected to be put on the defensive in his own interview. A few seconds of silence stretched painfully. The audience waited, eyes flicking between the two men. Finally, Ethan forced a smile. I don't have a problem with your success, Mr. Freeman. I'm just saying that Hollywood has its biases, and sometimes those biases work in certain people's favor. Freeman nodded slowly. Yes, Hollywood has biases. But tell me, Ethan, who decides which actors get the lead roles? Who funds the films? Who controls the studios? Ethan hesitated. Let me help you, Freeman continued. For decades, Hollywood has been run by people who look a lot more like you than like me. If the system was built to favor someone, it wasn't me. And yet, here I am. A murmur swept through the audience. Ethan clenched his jaw. His polished confidence was beginning to crack, but he wasn't done yet. That's an interesting perspective, he said, his voice a little sharper now. But some would argue that Hollywood has gone too far in the other direction, that it's now more focused on diversity than on actual talent. And maybe, just maybe, some actors have benefited from that shift more than others. Freeman leaned forward slightly, locking eyes with him. Ethan, he said, his voice slow and deliberate, you keep trying to find a reason for my success that has nothing to do with my ability. Why is that? The audience erupted in applause. Ethan Caldwell clenched his fists under the table. Ethan Caldwell swallowed hard. His smirk was gone, his confidence shaken. He had spent years crafting a reputation as a sharp, unflinching interviewer. But tonight, he had underestimated his guest. He forced another chuckle, but this time, there was no humor in it. Well, Mr. Freeman, I suppose we'll just have to agree to disagree. Freeman smiled, the kind of smile that didn't need words to carry weight. But he spoke anyway, his voice calm, deliberate, undeniable. No, Ethan, we don't have to agree to disagree. Because what you've done here tonight isn't a disagreement. It's an attempt to rewrite reality, to take my decades of work and reduce them to an agenda, to imply that my success is borrowed rather than earned. Ethan shifted in his chair. And let me tell you something, Freeman continued, his voice like a slow-moving river, deep, steady, unstoppable. I have played many roles in my life. I have narrated stories, embodied characters, and brought words to life. But one thing I have never been, and will never be, is an actor in the story you're trying to tell. The audience erupted. Applause. Cheers. Even a few standing ovations. Ethan Caldwell, trapped in the brightest spotlight of his own making, was left with nothing but the sound of his own silence. The camera stayed on him for a moment, capturing his stunned expression, before cutting back to Morgan Freeman. Calm, composed, victorious. Now, Freeman said, turning to the camera with a small smile. Shall we talk about something worth discussing? The applause only grew louder. And just like that, Ethan Caldwell, the arrogant journalist who had started the night with a smirk, was left with nothing but the bitter taste of his own defeat. The interview had ended, but the impact was only beginning. Within minutes of the broadcast cutting to commercial, social media exploded. Clips of Morgan Freeman's calm, devastating responses flooded every platform. Headlines popped up instantly. Meanwhile, behind the scenes, Ethan Caldwell sat in his dressing room, staring blankly at his phone. The notifications were endless. Every major news outlet was replaying his humiliating defeat. His Twitter mentions were a war zone. A knock on the door. His producer stepped in, looking grim. Ethan, corporate just called. They're not happy. They want a statement. Ethan exhaled sharply. A statement? About what? The producer gave him a long, knowing look. About your choice of words tonight. People aren't taking it well. Ethan rubbed his temples. It wasn't that bad. The producer handed him a phone, already open to the trending topics. Hashtag Fire Ethan Caldwell was at the top. Back at the studio, Morgan Freeman was walking toward the exit when a young journalist caught up to him. "Mr. Freeman, before you go, can I ask, did you expect the interview to go the way it did?" Freeman paused, offering the young reporter a knowing smile. "Son, I've been having conversations like that my whole life. The only difference is this time the world was watching." With that, he adjusted his coat, stepped into the night, and disappeared into the city lights. Meanwhile, Ethan Caldwell sat in his dressing room, realizing, perhaps for the first time in his career, that words have consequences. And that night, for once, he had nothing left to say. What a showdown. Morgan Freeman didn't just win that debate. He annihilated it with pure class and intelligence. But now, we want to hear from you. What was your favorite moment from this debate? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you love watching legends shut down arrogance with style, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next.